Erev Pesach, what can we do? It's like a roller coaster. We go from Purim, and the house is now piled up full of chametz, all the nosh that gets given for Mishloach Manot, and then we've got to start worrying about Pesach. So the emphasis is like this. I think we'll start with Erev Pesach. If we have time, maybe we'll look at cleaning for Pesach a little bit, but that's it's complicated. The various halachas of kashering utensils. So in the meantime, we'll deal with the easy stuff, right? Erev Pesach. So this year, Erev Pesach is going to be on a Friday. Is anybody here? Are you a firstborn? No. Yes, you're not. You are. Okay, here we go.
I'm the only.
Oh, your only child?
Yeah.
So you're also the youngest and the middle child and the firstborn. Look at that. Okay. I keep telling my brothers that I'm an only child, but they don't believe me for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway, so you must be familiar with the idea that Erev Pesach is Tainis Bechoros, right? That the Bechorim, all of the firstborn, have to fast, right? So who are the firstborn? So we're talking about firstborn males. So Erev Pesach, so there is a minig which is prevalent, a custom which is prevalent among all the communities that I know of, that instead of the firstborn fasting, somebody makes a siyum of a tractate of the Talmud in shul in the morning, and the firstborns can participate in the siyum, and once they've been part of the siyum, then they don't have to fast anymore. So just in general, what is a firstborn? Firstborn male. So what is a firstborn? There's a machlokes, there's a disagreement amongst the poskim, amongst the halachic authorities about whether or not somebody who was born by a caesarean section is considered to be a firstborn or not. There's all kinds of halachic ramifications. The verse that talks about firstborn is talking about a firstborn that's born naturally, and a C-section is not considered to be a natural birth anymore. And the halachic ramifications are actually quite far-reaching, whether the firstborn has a double inheritance, whether he's considered to be a firstborn with regards to the fasting.
Suppose it's an only child that was delivered by the caesarean section.
So that's still the
firstborn.
It's a firstborn. So
the only one.
It's the only child, but it's not a natural birth. So the question over here is whether a firstborn child or even an only child who was born via C-section, whether they would be obligated to fast, and the fast of the firstborn, whether it's considered to be whether it's firstborn or not. The truth is the argument is a technicality more than anything else. Right? It's got no one's disputing the fact that a child is the firstborn. That's an indisputable fact, and for some people, if they're only child, that's also indisputable, right? There's there's nothing to talk about. But it's just a technical issue over here about whether someone who's born with a C-section, whether that's considered to be a natural birth or not a natural birth, because the halachas that revolve around the firstborn are talking about a child who's born naturally. Okay, anyway, here, what's the pshat? The truth is like this: you're really supposed to hear the siyum, right, in order to be able to partake of the food. But the eved, even if you didn't hear the siyum and you just happen to be there, it's okay. You don't have to.
Seriously, so I don't have to go.
It's an interesting halacha over here. If somebody, a firstborn, is under the age of when do you become obligated to fast? When you become bar mitzvah, right? If you've got a firstborn son under the age of bar mitzvah, so there's a custom that the father fasts for his child. Okay, in all events, after the fast of the firstborn, what are we with Erev Pesach, right? So what is there still to do? There is a mitzvah to burn at least a kazayas of chametz. How much is a kazayas? Sort of like a volume of not very much, maybe about this much worth of chametz. It needs to be burnt on Erev Pesach. That's a mitzvah. That's why people are careful to leave over enough chametz to be able to do that. There is if somebody threw all of his chametz away, which does sometimes happen, sometimes with all the various bags of rubbish that have been set aside. So sometimes the bag with the chametz in gets thrown away as well. So really, to be able to fulfill the mitzvah, the Mishnah Berurah says you should go and find more chametz. Right? If needs be, go and buy some chametz or something in order to be able to burn it. There is a mitzvah on Erev Pesach at night. There's a mitzvah of what's called bedikas chametz. And the mitzvah is actually, there's a custom which is really very prevalent to leave out 10 pieces of bread They should be wrapped up very well because at that point the house is now completely ready for Pesach. And you have to go around looking for them. Now, it's interesting. There are two different approaches to B'dikas Chametz. One of them is that you should, very carefully and thoroughly check the entire house in order to make sure there's no chametz and find these 10 pieces of chametz on the way. The other opinion is that the house has been cleaned for Pesach, which means you don't really have to check very thoroughly. You just have to look for these 10 pieces of chametz. Whatever you do, it's going to be okay. There's a bracha which is recited before you begin B'dikas Chametz. There's a custom to go around with some with a torch or with a candle and with a spoon and a feather to brush up all the chametz. Just make sure that whoever put out the chametz, make sure they write down where they put it. We've had a few years where the person who put out the chametz, normally it's one of my daughters, puts out the chametz whilst we go off to Daven Meir, and then we come back, and like one of these pieces, we find 9, and she can't remember where the 10th one was, and it can get a little nerve-wracking. Right, so it's a good idea just to write down where these pieces were put in order to be able to know that even if they're not found, you'll be able to get them back afterwards and get rid of them before Pesach. Those are normally the bits of chametz that people have in order to make sure that they've got at least a kazayas worth of chametz to burn, and that's all being done the next day. If you can't find one of your bits of chametz, or more even, so at the end of having looked for the chametz, you make a declaration which nullifies all of your chametz anyway. Kol chamira, right? Everything that I have is no longer, it's all considered to be like the dust, and that is considered to be okay, which means if you never find this piece of chametz again. No, when you say kol chamira, that's it. You're done. In theory, you don't have to sell your chametz at all, because in theory, if you have any chametz left, then you just nullified it all. However, there's a problem. What's the problem? All of us know that a lot of chametz that people keep, it's important to them. There's a very famous story they tell. Rabbi Akiva Eiger, one of the great rabbis from a few generations ago. He was considered to be the halachic authority of the generation, and there was a fellow who owned whiskey, barrels and barrels of whiskey. That's how he made his parnasa. That's how he made his livelihood, selling whiskey. And he asked his friend to sell his whiskey for him. Go to the rabbi and sell the whiskey before Pesach. And his friend forgot. And on the first intermediate day of Pesach, Chol HaMoed, he met his friend, and his friend told him, "Oh my gosh," he says, "I forgot to sell your whiskey." So he got so upset, this fellow, he slapped him around the face. And then he got upset, whatever. The case came to Rabbi Akiva Eiger. What are you supposed to do with all this whiskey now? This whiskey is now, it's chametz. What are you supposed to do with it? So it's interesting, there are a minority opinion which says that whiskey, even though whiskey is made from chametz, there's no doubt about that whatsoever, right? Barley, it's all a problem. There are opinions who say that once it gets into the bottle, it's like it's so far removed from the original process that even though you can't use it on Pesach, but nevertheless, it's not something which should be regarded as chametz the way, for example, a packet of pasta would be considered. But nevertheless, people tend to be stringent on Pesach, so they sell their whiskey together with the rest of their chametz. So this fellow didn't sell it.
As long as you have some slew,
So that the case came to Rabbi Akiva Eiger. What are we supposed to do now? So the owner of the whiskey told Rabbi Akiva Eiger that lechora, it would seem that he's okay, he doesn't have to do anything, because when on Erev Pesach, when he did his B'dikas Chametz, he said Kol Chamira, he nullified his Chametz. So it's not mine, right? So Rabbi Akiva Eiger said no. He says it's a problem, because when you slapped your friend around the face, it showed that you were extremely concerned about the state of your whiskey. And in the end, he ruled that the whiskey he said the whiskey couldn't be used anymore. It was Chametz Shavah Alav Pesach, and it had to be got rid of. Which is a great financial loss for the person. Then there was a whole deal over there, who's responsible exactly, whether the person who was supposed to sell the chametz has a responsibility for the loss, or whether the owner of the whiskey has a responsibility for the loss. That's not for now. You mentioned Slivovitz. I always tell over this story, it makes me laugh. Every year it makes me laugh. My mother, extended family, when she was a kid, they always used to go away for Pesach. They used to go to a hotel on the coast of England, and the whole family would be there, all aunts and uncles and cousins and everybody. And she had an uncle. My mother had an uncle who used to start his day every morning. He used to start his day with a glass of whiskey. And that was the way to start your day. So it was a problem, not a little shot glass, a tumbler of whiskey. And he always used to suffer on Pesach because you can't drink whiskey on Pesach. So my uncle went away to yeshiva in Montreux in Switzerland, and he came back, that first Pesach, he came back with a bottle of Slivovitz. Slivovitz is plum brandy. Slivovitz is like 5,000 proof.
Right.
And it has to come in reinforced glass bottles. It's so strong, this stuff. You can run your car on it. And he gave it to his uncle as a gift for Pesach. Here, hopefully this will take care of the problem. Anyway, Mother said that the first morning of Pesach, the whole hotel was woken up by this fellow screaming, "He's trying to kill me! I'm going to die!" And he'd taken a cup full of Slivovitz and just downed it the way that he downed his whiskey. And this stuff is like twice as powerful. And so yeah, there are all kinds. Baruch Hashem, if anybody is worried, there are all kinds of things that you could drink on all kinds of alcoholic things that you could drink on Pesach that are going to take care of the problem. You just can't drink whiskey. Anyway, with regards to burning your chametz, you should really be there to watch the chametz being burnt.
You
right?
have to be there?
You really should. Yeah.
But what happens if you can?
If you can't be there, you can't be there. But really, the best way to
go away that Friday morning. I'm making one of the Hasidim from Eloi.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. He's your shaliach. He's going to burn your chametz for you.
Oh, okay.
Right? But hopefully he's going to stand there and watch it being burnt.
Yeah, his kids.
Right? Because the nullification has to come, right, once it's all been burnt up. Okay, let's have a look at Bedikas chametz. Let's see what we've got over here. Bedikas chametz is searching for the bread. So somebody here really should have asked a question. If you're making a bittul, right, if you're nullifying all your chametz, so why are we searching for chametz? You hear the problem, right? Which means that if you want to search for the chametz, then don't nullify your chametz. And if you want to nullify your chametz, what are you searching for the chametz for?
Double. No, it's to make sure that you don't have any chametz, and in case you have chametz, you have that.
Good, right? So what's the pshat? The pshat is like this: that the nullification itself, say Chazal, the sages, the nullification itself is not. It's not really sufficient for two reasons. It's not going to be good enough for two reasons. The first one is like the one that we just spoke about. You may own a lot of chametz, which means that if you own a lot of chametz, your nullification is not going to be really heartfelt. Right? So if you own barrels of whiskey, or you own, sometimes people owned, they had storage, storage wheat and barley that they would have stored away, and if they've got a lot of the stuff, it's going to be very difficult for them to give up on this, right, wholeheartedly.
So what do they do?
But you can sell it.
So here, that's where this is all going to come from, right? This whole idea of making sure that I'm going to do several things in order to make sure that between them all, I've got rid of the ownership of the chametz for over Pesach. Right? We'll get to that as well in Mitzvah Hashem. The second reason is that if you've got chametz in your house, then a person eats chametz all year round. So on Pesach, it could be that he'll forget, and maybe he'll eat chametz as well. The problem with eating chametz on Pesach is that it's got a rather nasty repercussion to it. The eating chametz on Pesach has a whatchamacallit of karet. Its punishment is karet, which is excision, which again has got different descriptions of what that is exactly. But lemaisa, it's something which we don't really want to have happen to ourselves, right? There are basically, the Rabbi said there are basically three different kinds of karet.
One is you don't have any children, right?
One is not having any children. The second one is dying early, and the age of 60, before the age of 60. Or the worst kind of karet of all, which is spiritual excision. What does that mean? That the soul is not connected to anything. After the body, a person can live to be 120 and have lots of children and have a very fulfilled and satisfied life over here, and gets upstairs at the age of 120, and the soul is in a state of
limbo.
Limbo, I guess, just a state of nothingness. It doesn't go to Gehenna, which Gehenna is actually a good place to go to because it means there's some kind of rectification taking place. It does not go to the world of souls, which is where a soul that's been through its tikkun ends up in, and it's just left in a state of nothingness. And apparently, according to the Kabbalists, that's the worst possible situation for the soul to be. It's not suffering. It's not in any pain.
But what was his Zionist? I mean, what did he do?
There are all kinds of different things that can cause chorus. I don't know. Again, I don't know.
But that was specific.
I don't know. I don't know at which point HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he does this, when he does that, when he does the other. I really don't know. I don't know. I'm not even sure if there's a rule, if there are rules that we're aware of down here in the physical world. I don't know. Good. Okay. So we understand now that Kol Chamira, the nullification, is not enough. But if it's not enough, so how about if we let's just search for the chometz and get rid of the chometz, and then we don't have to say Kol Chamira. Right? So the answer for that is very obvious, because what happens if you miss something out? You've lost one of your 10 pieces of chometz, and now you don't know what to do with it. Right? So now I'm taking care of everything. This way round, I'm going to take care of everything. When do you start searching for the chometz? So you should start when it becomes night. The accepted custom is that you go off on Erev Pesach, right? So this year Erev Pesach is going to be on Thursday night. We're going to go off, we're going to daven Ma'ariv, and then we're going to come back from shul after davening Ma'ariv, and we're going to start looking for the chometz. A person
have to have lights out?
No, lights on. As much light as possible.
When searching for chometz?
Yeah. You need as much light as possible. And like I said, the custom is to take a candle, right, and to get into those little nooks and crannies. So we used to do this every year. We still do it, but we're a little bit more careful than we used to be, because one of my daughters, when she was very young, we're looking for the chometz, and all of a sudden there's this horrible smell. And she was like a little spaced out. She's like holding a candle like this against her hair, and her hair was beginning to singe, and it was the smell. The smell was awful, actually. So you got to be careful. Be careful of things like curtains, right? Setting curtains on fire. Be careful of children. Don't set them on fire. Some people have the custom nowadays not to use a candle. Take a flashlight. That's okay, right? Just to be able to get into the places where it's difficult to see, right? Because the light, Baruch Hashem, we have lots of light in the house nowadays, but it doesn't get absolutely everywhere. One of the things that you should not do before you begin B'dikas Chometz is you shouldn't start a meal. Don't start eating, right? Because when we start eating, so as Jews, we tend to start eating and we don't necessarily stop. Which is something that's going to be a problem. So we have to take care of the mitzvah of B'dikas Chometz. If you daven, like I said before, if you daven Ma'ariv normally at the beginning, the first opportunity to daven Ma'ariv, then you should definitely daven Ma'ariv before you do B'dikas Chometz. Otherwise, if you want, you can do it afterwards. What are you looking for when you come to do B'dikas Chometz? So you're not just necessarily looking for the chometz that has been put away, those 10 little pieces, but you're looking for any chometz that is suitable for human consumption. That's a very subjective term, I think, right?
Human consumption?
Human consumption.
So plastilina?
Do you know, it's interesting. Play-Doh, plastilina, I think, is made differently, but Play-Doh was made with flour.
Right.
And there was a whole kasha about Play-Doh, what you're supposed to do with Play-Doh on Pesach. Now the emphasis is like this: you can't, even though children do their best to do it, you can't really eat Play-Doh. Children try. Well, I mean, all those different colours. You would imagine that they had blueberry flavour and raspberry flavour, and so Play-Doh has a din of what's called chometz nushka. Chometz nushka is chometz that even a dog wouldn't eat, which means it's still chometz, but it's inedible. So the best thing to do with Play-Doh, if you have any Play-Doh, but Moshe, you have any Play-Doh in your house? You don't use Play-Doh anymore. You look like a Lego man to me. You don't look like a Play-Doh man to me. But if you've got Play-Doh in the house, the best thing to do is just to put it away in one of the cupboards and not to take it out over Pesach, because of the concern of the chametz that's inside of it. Well, what about crumbs? Right, crumbs of chametz, things that we need to be concerned about. So crumbs that are slightly dirty, you don't have to be worried about because they're not going to be eaten, right? You wouldn't eat them. But other crumbs, yeah, you need to be concerned about crumbs, especially if you have enough crumbs that together they're going to make up a kazay's worth of things. You should check your pockets, right? Because we tend to put food in our pockets from time to time, and sometimes we do forget about them. Why do we put aside 10 different pieces of bread? So of course it's to do with the 10 plagues, right? Number 10 is very central to the whole concept of Seder night and the whole concept of Pesach, and so that's what we're going to do. We're going to put out 10 pieces because it's just, the evidence is like this. You want to put out 5 pieces, put out 5. You want to put out 15, put out 15. 10 is the just a standard number that's used by everybody. That they're actually the most incredible Kabbalistic concepts that revolve around the number 10 and counting in blocks of 10. Gematria, so we go from Aleph to Tet is 1 to 9. Those are the single digits. Then you move into Yud, which is double digits, and then 10 up to 90. And then you've got 90, then it becomes 100. That's Kuf. So the Shlag Kodesh, one of the great Ashkenazi Kabbalists from a couple hundred years ago, he says like this. He says, all of this would be very nice. He says, but Lamaisa, what happens? We get to 100, and then we get Kuf, Shin, Reish, Kuf, Reish, Shin, Taf, and we get to 400, and that's the end of the Aleph base. That's it, we're done. Right? Really, we should be getting up to 900, right? Everything should be going around in cycles. So he says, the five final letters, final Chof, final Mem, final Nun, final Pei, and final Tzadi. And he says that they add on. So you get to 400, and Taf is 400, final Chof is 500, final Mem is 600, final Nun is 700, final Pei is 800, final Nun is 900, and then you get to 1,000. How do you say 1,000 in Hebrew? Aleph. Aleph is an Aleph. You're back to the beginning all over again. Come round all over the cycles that are going round and round.